what's going on everyone? Collector here, and I just wanted to do a quick video on the Sega Dreamcast. I'd done one before, where I'd done, I can't remember what anniversary it was, it couldn't have been that long ago because I've only been on YouTube for a few years, but I wanted to do a quick video on the Sega Dreamcast, seeing as, the famous date of the 9th of the 9th, 99 has rolled around and everyone's talking about the Dreamcast again. But what I want to talk about the most is my own little personal story from when I essentially lost a lot of faith in both gamers and the industry during the time of the Dreamcast. And the Sega Dreamcast is certainly one of my all-time favorite consoles ever. I'll keep on talking about it, for my whole life. It really is one of those machines. You hear a lot of people saying that, but what I don't see on YouTube, is a lot of people who talk about that era and what actually happened. The transition from the Sega Saturn, a console which is many of you might know is my second favorite console ever. The transition from the Sega Saturn to the Sega Dreamcast, and what that felt like, and also how it felt when actually Sega left the console market, because for many people back then, including myself, it was a pretty dark time as a gamer, because that's what I am. I'm a gamer, and I was obviously a huge Sega fan, and by that time, by the Dreamcast, the Saturn, the N64, the GameCube, I was a Sega and Nintendo fan, bigger than I'd ever been, by that point. But the Sega Dreamcast, it went through, hell. But it was also, as we know, Sega's swan song. And the advertising and everything that they'd done for it was absolutely top notch back then. You saw the Dreamcast, in so many places, more so than the Sega Saturn. But, what I want to show you as well, I want to show you some of my magazines from that time. Because even though the Dreamcast was online, as we know, the internet wasn't really that big a thing. Even back then, of course, we had it, and it was still rolling by. We were on Napster and all and all this stuff. We were using websites. Of course we were. But it was still still very quiet in that sense. So I wasn't. There's only so many websites that I went on, and I was still heavily using magazines back then. I had my Sega Saturn magazines, like I said, and then I moved on to the Dreamcast, and it was through the Sega Saturn magazines that I learned about Dreamcast. So what I want to do right now is just show you some of those magazines, and and tell you how I felt at that time, because being a Sega Saturn fan, I did feel all of the the dark times of the Saturn as well, but I still absolutely love my Saturn. So yeah, let me just show you some of my magazines right now. So yeah, when I got my Sega Saturn, these were the official magazines that I used to read. The Sega Saturn, official magazine. This is the one that came in the UK. And then when you first started hearing the Dreamcast, it was through this magazine, at least for me. So, you started seeing the Dreamcast here, when it was unveiled and stuff. A lot of people, might remember the tech demo here, which was, at the time, it was, it was crazy, absolutely crazy when, tech demos, really still impressed. And, this is the type of stuff that was blowing you away. You were seeing like, environments like this, which you just never saw before, on 32-bit machines. And it's seeing the Dreamcast for the first time. It was also weird, to see it in the Sega Saturn magazine, because this was, for Saturn games, but also at this time, I remember it clearly. The Saturn, in terms of software, was just drying up. So these official Sega Saturn magazines, to keep Sega, momentum going, were pretty much just becoming Saturn Dreamcast magazines. You can see D2 here, and like I said, when you first saw these character models, it was just absolutely mind blowing. This, so you just poured through it all. I used to just live in these magazines. As as a lot of people did. I say a lot of people, not with the not with the Sega Saturn, but You know, and some of the last games on the Sega Saturn, Deep Fear, which was a Resident Evil type of game. You know, this is pretty much what the Saturn become. Shining Force Part 3, Part 2, that never got released in the West, only in Japan. I've got the first part, which is an absolutely, you know, phenomenal game. And you know, the same guys who done this are the same guys who done Golden Sun. You know, later on, Camelot. You know, as you know, there you go. This Shining Force 3. As I mentioned, you know, these are all the Saturn games, you know, I bought and played at the time, and you know, they're incredible. But you know, as you you know, went through these magazines, well, there you go. There's a bit of Panzer Dragoon there, Panzer Dragoon Guide. You know, as many of you might know, Panzer Dragoon is, you know, still probably my personal favorite gaming experience, you know, of all time. But you also started seeing a lot of arcade stuff. You know, Fighting Vipers 2. Now, Fighting Vipers was on a Saturn. But you knew this wasn't coming to the Saturn. You know, these were arcade games on the next level. You know, so yeah. You know, you started seeing in these Sega Saturn magazines how the Dreamcast started coming in. Deep Fear again. You know, the same game rolling over each month because it's pretty much all you had. There you go. You know, same Dreamcast demo. You started seeing Godzilla. You know, and once again, even seeing character models like this. You know, it was really getting you excited for the Dreamcast. You know, as much as I love my Saturn, you know, even by then, you know, I knew it was dead. You know, more D2 as well, and you know, a lot of people even back then, you know, you still knew what CGI was. You know, of course you did. You know, and it still really impressed you. So you were happy to see. You think, oh man, Daytona 2 in the arcades was. Was just so good, but these were kind of the games, the graphical type of games that were being promised for the Dreamcast, and based off all the tech demos that we were seeing, you know, you really, you know, believed that the Dreamcast was capable of it, and you know, the reality turned out for the most part to be true. Radiant Silvergun on a Saturn, I got that game so good. Sorry, just a little trip down, you know, memory lane here. There you go, Pi from Virtua Fighter. You know, you said I love these little character things at the back here. You know, they were great, just showing your Sega, your favorite Sega cards and stuff. But yeah, you know, coin ops were heavily featured in these books. Spike outs, oh gosh. You know, all this stuff is bring back memories of, you know, when you started getting really hyped for the Dreamcast. And then, you know, another Sega Saturn magazine. Remember, we're still on Saturn magazines here. Started seeing, you know, Sonic Adventure, Star Wars Trilogy. Anyone play that in the arcades? Man, it was one of the best Star Wars games. It was seriously good. You know, you started seeing Sonic Adventure, and you're like, my God, you know, a proper Sonic in 3D. You know, a lot of people see that now. You know, I always wonder how many people, you know, really, you know, experience seeing Sonic in 3D for the first time. And I remember that when I first saw Sonic Adventure footage, like you might know about me, you know, I used to work in Electronics Boutique, and when the Dreamcast was coming out, you know, we saw this footage. And I remember when I said CGI, you know, still impressed us back then, seeing, you know, the Chaos emeralds, and you know, the giant Chaos monster, actual CGI. From Sonic Adventure, it just blew my mind. You know, I don't even remember the song. You know, can't hold on much longer. My singing voice is terrible. You know, but these are the screenshots that you saw of Sonic, and you just couldn't believe it. And this is what happened to the Sega Saturn magazine. You know, it pretty much in its dying thrones became only Japanese Saturn games that hardly, you know, got released over here, and then just mostly. You know, Dreamcast stuff. You know, look, we even had a guide, right, for Symphony of the Night, yeah, on the Saturn, and it didn't even release in the West. You know, on the Sega Saturn. You know, that's just how desperate, you know, we decided to become. But yeah, you know, there's a Virtual Cop as well. You know, that's a shame that we never one of those. You know, but the final magazine was this one. This Sega Saturn magazine, you know, Drop Dead Gorgeous, Dead or Alive, no, it's the first Dead or Alive, sorry, not Dead or Alive 2. Yeah, it was Dead or Alive 2, what am I talking about, yeah. On the front. And then you saw this, you know, Sega magazine is no more. You are out here with Sonic, with his Sonic Adventure artwork. just plastered there on the front page. And I was gutted, absolutely gutted that the Saturn had come to the end, the magazines had come to the end. But like I said, by this point, you were just seeing, Dreamcast stuff. It's pretty much Dreamcast arcade stuff and the remnants of, god damn, the remnants of, you can see why we love Dead or Alive 2. One more look. Oh man, you can see why we all play Dead or Alive 2. But anyway, here you go. There's more Godzilla there, and people might look at these character models now, and as crap and cheesy as it was, this is based off the reboot of Godzilla, the US one, with the Puff Daddy soundtrack. You watch it now, it's terrible, but I love that film. But you started seeing Blue Stinger. Like I said, remember, Sega Saturn magazine, right? Started seeing Blue Stinger, and we come off the PlayStation 1 and even the N64, and these games at the time, they just looked real. And we loved that. Of course we did. It was the height of the 3D era, and you're seeing all the stuff. You got Capcom versus X-Men there. Street Fighter versus X-Men, which is great. But yeah, here we go now. Unreal, when Unreal was still huge. All these games, we're pretty much now rolling over to the Dreamcast, as we know, Castlevania again. But it was in this magazine that the final page, really broke my heart. And as you can see, it says "Game Over, yeah," which if anyone plays Sega Rally, it goes "Game Over, yeah." But it said, I'll never forget this last page. Honestly, I won't. Sega Saturn, the party may be over, but the dream goes on. And then you see some Dreamcast games there: Sega Rally 2, D2, Sonic Adventure. And, this was the last Saturn magazine, and I was gutted. But you know what? Because, but the dream goes on, this was the hype, of leading into the Dreamcast for me from the Sega Saturn. I was a Sega Saturn boy, deep in the Saturn. People, so many people didn't touch that console, but I was still Sega, straight for the Mega Drive, straight to the Saturn, and straight to the Dreamcast. And, in the UK, we got more, official Dreamcast magazines. Magazines are still bought back then. Of course I did. And these were introduced us to the Dreamcast. And as we know, the Dreamcast had loads of adverts on TV. The barbershop ones, and you start seeing Ready to Rumble, which the Dreamcast, man, was just seeing these games for the first time, just absolutely blew my mind. And the PlayStation 2 wasn't out. Dreamcast came out first, PlayStation 2 wasn't out, and all these games were coming on the Dreamcast, and they were just, it's just phenomenal. MDK, was a great game as well. You start seeing all these magazines. I had another Dreamcast magazine, DC UK, and Trickstyle. When you first saw Trickstyle, man, it looked absolutely gorgeous. This futuristic hoverboard racing game. That was a launch title. I snapped that up. Played that loads. Sonic Adventure was out on the launch, and at the time I did really love Sonic Adventure. Virtua Fighter 3. I actually didn't like Virtua Fighter 3 that much. It was a good game, but Virtua Fighter 2, in my opinion, was still just a better game. Maybe that was just my Saturn blood, but House of the Dead 2. So you start seeing all these arcade games coming, and they weren't just arcade games. They were leaps and bounds above everything else you had saw, and it was staggering. So as you know, I worked in Powerstone. I worked in Electronics Boutique. And during that time, the Saturn was already dead. The PS1 and the N64 were fighting each other. I used to sell both of those consoles. Admittedly, I would push the N64 harder than the PS1. How could I not? But I was still quite an honest, sales guy. I was still a gamer. And when people asked me what, choose a console for them, I'd ask them what type of games they're looking for, and I'd more direct them towards that type of console. I never had any consoles returned because people were unhappy. because back then both the N64 and the PS1 had their games. They were great. Sorry if the picture changes a little bit just there. My camera stopped for some reason on my phone, but yeah, when I was working in Electronics Boutique, when we saw the Dreamcast, we got the demo units, we got some early as well, obviously because we were a retail store. We would put the Dreamcast on the CRT TVs, which are mounted on the ceiling. There's one on the counter, there's one next to the counter. We had so many TVs. We had the Dreamcast on all of them, blasting all of these games, which just graphically blew everything out of the water. Bright colors, great sounds. These games just looked phenomenal. And where I started to lose faith in gamers and just a general public really is that we'd be showing these games, and the Dreamcast had those launch titles, and we'd be showing them. We had early shots of like Soul Calibur and Power Stone, Sonic Avenger blasting away, Trick Style, Ready to Rumble boxing. The other consoles weren't doing any of it, and people would come in and say, just say to me, I'm sorry, the Dreamcast looks great, but I'm going to wait for the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 is going to be amazing. The PlayStation 2 is going to be that. And, that's fine. People buy one console sometime, right? But I'm talking about the gamers here. And when we were demoing Soul Calibur, it's, we always struggle to describe how these games looked. How earth-shatteringly, stunningly gorgeous they looked, not just graphically but animation-wise, sound-wise. And there was nothing, absolutely nothing on the market at the time that looked anywhere near as good as these games. Hydro Thunder looked absolutely, all the arcade conversions just were better on the Dreamcast, which makes me laugh because today, people fight over the more powerful consoles and stuff. This was the most powerful console on the market, and not only that, it had games that were on no other platform. Yeah, other games that again ported to the Dreamcast, and if the Dreamcast, if those other games were on other consoles, first of all, like I said, they came to the Dreamcast, better versions like Soul Reaver, like Shadow Man, all these games that were coming to the Dreamcast, and no one cared. And I was scratching my head as to why. All the adverts about the internet were on TV, commercials, they were in the shops, they were in magazines, they were on the early websites everywhere, and no one cared. Everyone, for the most part, was waiting for the PlayStation 2, and I was scratching my head as to why. Because, like I said, I'm a gamer, okay, and I followed the games. That's what I done. Sorry, everyone, my camera keeps on cutting out. I really apologize. But where was I? As I said, in a short 2 years that this console was on the market, for the most part, everyone ignored it. And when we saw games like Soul Calibur, Power Stone, Jet Set Radio, all the great arcade games, the Soul Reavers, the Shadow Mans, the Shemu's, people forget how many third-party games came to the Dreamcast as well. And the Dreamcast was almost was pretty much what the Xbox came to be, I suppose. And when I mean that, and also when I mean about the PlayStation, a lot of people would say like Gears of War might never have happened if the Xbox didn't come out, or all these games from id Software and stuff might not have happened if these Xbox guys didn't come out, or the PlayStation guys didn't come out. But all of these companies were on the Dreamcast. They were with Sega. The Saturn, the Dreamcast, sorry, nearly had Half-Life. And I truly believe if that console sold and gamers bought that system, Half-Life would have finally released on our system. It was getting the third-party games that Nintendo wasn't. Furballs, which turned into Fur Fighters at the end, is a great third-person shooter, and I'd love for more games like this where you have animal protagonists doing things that only animals can do, but with guns. But look, it had like it had the Vigilantes, the South Parks, NBAs, forget EA, I don't even want to mention them in this video. It had all the third-party stuff. Metropolis Street Racer, as we know, turned into Project Gotham, but it was on the Dreamcast first, and these games looked as realistic as you could hope for in racing games back then, more so than Gran Turismo, and anything else on the market. The Dreamcast had the games. I don't want to listen to anyone who says the Dreamcast didn't have the games. It had the games, it had the support from the people who cared, industry-wise. But gamers and just the market just rejected it. It done so much. It had the arcade stick, the wheels. We all know about the VMU, we all know about this stuff. But I just don't understand why gamers turned down this stunning console and waited the time they have to wait for the PlayStation 2. Even if the Dreamcast was just a stopgap. It wasn't expensive. It was not an expensive console. Yeah, it was vastly cheaper than a PlayStation 2 when it came out, I can tell you that much. But even if it was just a stopgap and people just supported it just for a bit longer and then got a PlayStation 2 or traded their Dreamcast in for the PlayStation 2, fine, whatever. But I just never understood why gamers didn't support this machine, because it just had the stuff. And so I got one more just magazine sitting on the side there where, just before you had proper internet as well. We got guides and stuff like that. But anyway, I just thought I'd show you some of the magazines. But it really bugged me, and I've always had a chip on my shoulder for the industry and for gamers of why this console was shunned the way it was. I don't accept excuses about the Mega CD and the Saturn flopping. We know consoles flop and people and companies come back from them. We've seen it happen before, and the Dreamcast had everything next gen you could possibly expect from a next gen system. The online was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Get out again. But you could play games like Phantasy Star Online, Quake, Choo Choo Rocket, all these games online just easily and seamlessly, and the amount of fun and memories I gained from playing on this console was just phenomenal. And it still bugs me to crap today now how so many people come out now and say that the Dreamcast was an amazing system. You see it everywhere now, an amazing system. I always think, where were these people? If these people could sit around and wait for the PlayStation 2, the gamers were there. They were there for the N64, they were there for the PS1, but they were not there for Sega. And I posted a tweet today saying that when I was talking about the Dreamcast 2. If the Dreamcast had succeeded, what would the Dreamcast 2 had been like? And everyone champions Xbox Live when it came on the original Xbox and stuff. Don't forget the Dreamcast brought online gaming to consoles, and we're talking about Sega here, and I honestly wonder what their second online attempt would have been like. Would we have had stores already? Something that Sega already dabbled with. Would we have had stores by the Sega Dreamcast 2 before the Xbox One? Would the VMU evolved into something else, some sort of other type of thing that you could interact with? We probably would have had dual analog sticks. What would Sonic games on a Sega system be like compared to what they are today? I suppose this is a bit of a rant video, but that trip from the Saturn to the Dreamcast, and when Sega dropped out of the console market, is one of my darkest gaming days. Not just because I was a Sega fan, but just for the industry and how gamers can just flip-flop and push the market in a direction that for me hasn't necessarily been for the better. I honestly wonder where we would be if Sega was still on the market, if they were a healthy company, if they would manage to bounce back from a successful Dreamcast where they righted so many wrongs that they had with the Sega Saturn. If they were given this chance, where would they be today? Where would the industry be today? How unique and innovative would Sega of today be with their own hardware, with their new graphical, hardware boards for what they used to push? People say, oh, the Dreamcast died because of arcade games. Arcade games were moving on then. The Dreamcast, even from Sega, just didn't have arcade games. Don't get me wrong, they were still their bread and butter back then, but they were doing other stuff. Would Shenmue Saga, would it be complete by now? Okay, so my camera keeps on cutting out. I think it's telling me to stop this rant. But I'm just saying, where would we be if we as gamers had supported this machine like I feel like we should have, instead of following that Sony marketing hype train just because it had a DVD player first and foremost? And where were all the Crash Bandicoot fans? Where were all the Tekken fans, after the PlayStation 1? No one cared about those games as much as they did on the PlayStation 1, and people still cared about Sega games. Yeah, but Sega were off their own console, and anyway, there should be a celebration of the 20th anniversary, but I will do that for the UK anniversary, which is in October, not September. I'll do a nice happy one, even though, like I said, I've already done a video before. I'll do another one, a nice happy Sega video. But mini rant over. I loved the Dreamcast. I was a gamer who embraced it at the time, bought everything at the time, supported the machine, had some of my greatest gaming memories of it, and I'm still bitter as hell that this machine died, and I blame gamers. Blame you. Yo! Anyway, let me know your thoughts. I can imagine me getting some hate. I kind of don't care, but let me know your thoughts, and curse my camera. But anyway, quick video. I think it's a quick video. I don't know once I put it together. Let me know your comments. Take care all, and peace.